So welcome to today's SharePoint Shop Talk. We're so happy that all of you can join us. Today's a special SharePoint Shop Talk. We actually have a products spotlight with K2 and Adlib, and we will also field questions live at the end. So thank you for joining us. My name is Jamie Schweit, and I help to run the SharePoint ShopTalk community. We're on SharePointShopTalk.com. If you haven't been able to join us there yet, you can. You can join the actual site and talk amongst all the different SharePoint users and ask some questions about what they're doing. We're also on Facebook as well as Twitter at SP Shop Talk and Arcovis. The organizer is at Arcovis, New York City. And then we're also on LinkedIn. We have two group names called SharePoint Shop Talk and New York Enterprise Search User Group. As previously mentioned, Arcovis is the organizer for SharePoint Shop Talk. They're both certified partners specializing in SharePoint and search specialists. They are offering a box offering as in fast in a box, SharePoint Internet Deployment, and Search First Migration. If you have any questions about SharePoint and Search, you can always email Arcovis directly at info@arcovis.com and tweet to us at Arcovis New York City. For those of you joining us for the first time, just letting you know about the functionality. You are all panelists, so that you should be able to chat with us throughout today's talk, as well as raise your hand for any questions that you might have, or ask your questions directly in the questions bar. The red arrow there will also minimize your dashboard. If you're using the phone, please do not place the call on hold. *6 will mute you as well as unmute you. If you need the audio pin, raise your hand and I'll send you one. State your name and your question, and remember that no question is too big or too small. So without further ado, we're going to introduce our panelists, starting with John White today.
Hello everybody. As mentioned, my name is John White. I'm a SharePoint consultant up here in the Great White North, just outside of Toronto, Ontario. Work with a company called Unlimited Viz. I'm a SharePoint MVP and a SQL VPS. So by that you might have guessed that we focus in on business intelligence solutions primarily, also with some forms of workflow.
Thanks. And John, as you see there, I have a Microsoft SkyDrive because I saw your tweet earlier. And you, can you just tell the group what you're advising everybody to do? Because I want to know myself as well.
Sure. If you haven't heard about this already, if you've used SkyDrive in the past, which I guess if you didn't know is Microsoft's cloud storage for your files, it's been around for a very long time. Actually, it's been around for several years, and I've been using it for some time. And they have traditionally offered 25 gigabytes of free storage in the cloud. A few weeks ago, they've changed their policy on that. The good news is they're letting you get more storage. There's a paid-for model allowed, so you can get, I think, up to 100 gigabyte storage in the cloud if you want to pay for it, which is pretty reasonable, something like $50 a year. The bad news is they took the free part of it and dropped that down to 7 gigabytes of storage. But for a period of time, you can go onto your SkyDrive account, and all you got to do is log into skydrive.live.com and say, I want my 25 gigs back, and they'll give it to you for free. And that's in perpetuity. You just need to do it once. So I think you log on to skydrive.live.com, and somewhere in there there's a Manage My Storage link. You go there, and you'll see the option show up.
Thanks. I knew it was important. Thanks a lot. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Well, Natalia won't be with us today. She's actually on a client site. But Paul is with us. Paul, say hello to the group, please.
Hi, everybody. My name's Paul Olenek. I'm a SharePoint consultant. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I just heard a weird noise. I'm a SharePoint consultant in New York City with Arcovis, and I've been working exclusively with SharePoint since the beta release of OS, which I think was around 2006. Highly focused on search for the last, I'd say, year and a half. And speaking of which, I'm presenting at the Search Summit. Jamise has it up there this coming Wednesday, and I'm going to be talking about strategies and tools for troubleshooting fast search for SharePoint.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to that. Thanks a lot, Paul. Next up, we have Laura Rogers with us today. How are you, Laura?
Good. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. I'm Laura Rogers. I live in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm a SharePoint MVP and written a few SharePoint books. And my specialties are workflows, InfoPath forms, database web parts, just all that stuff that you can do out of the box without having to write code.
Excellent. And Laura, I thought it would be kind of fun to play a quick game of Find Laura. Laura was just at the International SharePoint Conference, and this was all the speakers that were there. That's a lot of speakers, obviously. But can anyone find Laura? I think I found you. Well, if you met the challenge and you think you found her, I think I'm going to guess. Are you there in the red next to the young gentleman with the hat?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I wanted to know. All right. Well, thank you, Laura, for joining us. And we have a question coming up after the presentation about content query web parts, and I hope you will be able to help out with that one.
Okay.
All right. So just letting you know what the rest of the month is going to look like with SharePoint ShopTalk. Next week is going to be a general SharePoint ShopTalk, and I think what we're going to do is poll our audience for the top 15 SharePoint questions and try to get that answered over the phone. Also, guest panelist Peter Ward will talk to us about applying an IT strategy to your SharePoint, which is always good. And then panelist Chris Petit will present introduction to usability testing and analysis. And as I said last week, a sneak peek, John will be presenting Power Pivot and Power View. So looking forward to that as well. So without further ado, we're going to introduce our Product Spotlight members who are on the call, starting with those from Adlib, which is Karen and Kyle. I guess they're going to do an intro of themselves when they begin the demo, so I just want to say that Karen and Kyle is a strategic and consulting senior account executive, and Kyle is a sales engineer at Adlib Software. And they work together with Greg Sanderson, who's also on the call, a technical specialist at Source Code for K2. And there's his Twitter handle at K2 and K2. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to them. So I guess I make you presenter, correct? Greg.
Yeah. Hi, Janice. Thank you so much. It's Greg Sanderson. Please make me a presenter, and I will get going.
Right.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. And can everyone see my screen? Eventually it should be a SharePoint 2010 site called Contracts Management.
Yep, looks good.
Thank you so much. So thank you, everybody. My name is Greg Sanderson. I'm a technical specialist at K2, and I actually spoke at SharePoint ShopTalk about, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago, and I showed a presentation about K2 and a demo. Essentially, K2 is a workflow platform that provides the tools for organizations to build workflow applications and business process management applications around their business processes without code. And all the tools like forms and reporting and task management and so forth, all the different things you need to stand up a workflow-based process. And I talked to everybody a few months ago, so I won't get into too much of the marketing, but the whole purpose today is to show a K2 solution that integrates with our friends from Adlib. And so I'm so happy to be talking with you guys today, and I would like to just introduce Karen and Kyle from Adlib and let them say hello. And Kyle and Karen, take it away.
Hello.
Hello, Karen.
Hello, we're muted.
Greg, can you hear us?
Hi, can you hear Greg?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess Kyle and Karen are from Adlib are muted. You guys can hear me though, right?
They're not
I just heard her saying she was muted. So.
Karen, you're not muted.
Can you hear us now?
We hear you.
Oh, we're not muted anymore. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Just wanted to say thank you very much for having us here. And I'm Karen Haynes from Adlib Software, and I'm in the sales side of things, as well as Kyle Walsh here, who's going to be supporting Greg here during the presentation. Thanks.
Thanks so much. And K2 partners with great alliance partners like Adlib. Again, K2 it's really workflow and business process management, and it allows organizations to build workflow without code and stand up those types of applications. And we integrate with, we have great partners like Adlib that really bring our solutions, to the next level. And so I'm going to show a demo, and I believe Adlib was on this call about 2 weeks ago, correct? Showing their product.
Yes, we were, and so we isolated Adlib's product and showed how Adlib can automate conversion to PDF in or outside of the SharePoint environment, as well as adding and customizing features to documents on the output, such as watermarks, headers, footers, that sort of thing, and also running an OCR process on image files to make them searchable in SharePoint. What we were hoping to supplement this event with was to show how, combined with K2, together we add even greater value to the SharePoint environment by being able to automate workflows and being part of a K2 workflow where used.
Great. And thanks, Karen. And I think, when you put the whole story together when it comes to K2 and Adlib, you really get a great foundation around document management and enterprise content management because, when it comes down to it, you have a workflow software and you have a document and content to PDF conversion and alteration software. So you're asking, if you think about it, your employees that are involved in the workflow and are involved in this business process, when you don't have automation software and when you don't have conversion software like Adlib, you're really asking your employees to take on additional responsibilities. You're asking them to be librarians because they need to learn how to categorize documents in SharePoint. They need to learn how to use metadata and apply it. They need to learn how to convert documents from a Word document to a PDF, for example. But when you bring K2 and Adlib together, you're actually focusing those knowledge workers, your employees, on doing their job. They have the content in front of them, they have the documents in front of them, they have the actual information in front of them where they need to make a decision, and they're given that document so it's contextually relevant, so that they can make a decision along the way and not be responsible for being librarians and content managers and metadata managers and just doing all these extra activities. We can have them focus on doing their job, which is making a decision based on the information that we give them and move the process along. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And I think K2 and Adlib bring a great functionality to the table. And speaking from the K2 standpoint, Adlib is one of our best alliances, and you really can't get much more from them in terms of a partner. So unless Karen or Kyle has anything else to say, I'm going to jump right into the demo.
Go for it.
Cool. So here's a SharePoint 2010 site, and we've built this site around a contracts management process that is using various K2 web parts, and you can see at the top right, I'm logged in as Barry Hoffman. So without further ado, I'm just going to kick off a new contract request, and this spins up an info path form, and K2 is forms agnostic. And what that means is we can work with info path forms, we can work with SharePoint forms, we can work with our own form technology, which is K2 Smart Forms, Adobe Forms, web forms, whatever the case might be. But in this case, we decided to start with InfoPath. And by filling out this new contracts management form, we're going to kick off the workflow. So you can see I'm logged in as Barry, and what that does is it automatically queries using our smart object architecture. We're going to query data in Active Directory. So you can see it brings back already, I'm Barry, here's my department, here's my office information. And another K2 Smart Object architecture information here is I'm going to query SQL. So by picking a project number, it automatically brings back data from our SQL table. And again, when I talk about K2 Smart Objects, and if you remember back from a few months ago when we presented, we're really talking about an abstract data layer that provides the methods around interfacing with those enterprise data stores and enterprise data applications like SQL and SharePoint and Active Directory and Exchange and CRM, and then externally web services and SAP and PeopleSoft and Oracle. It just gives us the ability to interface with these enterprise data stores and enterprise data applications, sometimes out of the box, sometimes we have to build a connection to it, but the whole point is that when it comes to design time, we have a reusable, repeatable process to get at that data that exists in these enterprise applications. So I put in a project number, 003, and that was the input parameter, and it just returned information from that row in SQL about that project. So let me put in a contract amount, 56 million here. We'll put a contract due date in, and I'm just filling out the form in InfoPath. Some comments and notes, whatever. And now in terms of reviewers, and you'll see this as we move on downstream through the process, our reviewers are, we have a default reviewer that's been built into the workflow definition, and her name is Holly. But I could also say I want Anthony to have the option and Brandon maybe to take action on the process. So in terms of task management, people are going to receive an email, and they're going to see an item come up in their SharePoint web part, and they may also be using a web-based or a mobile-based technology, and on their iPhone or their BlackBerry, they can see an item pop up on their phone that says, hey, you have a task. You need to review this contracts management entity. Let me attach some documents. And the cool thing is here, as you can see, is I'm attaching different types of documents. So there's the cover page, which is a Word document. And I'm going to go ahead and attach another Word document, which is the proposal letter. And then you can see I'm going to also attach an Excel sheet and a TIFF file. And I don't know if, Kyle, you want to take over and mention something about Adlib here while I'm doing this.
Yeah, certainly. So as Greg and Karen mentioned, my name is Kyle Walsh, Technical Sales Engineer at Adlib. So Greg is adding different file types to the InfoPath form that will eventually end up converting and merging into a single PDF. So Adlib supports a wide variety of file formats today. There's over 400 formats, and some of the files that Greg has added in regards to the Office documents, we support all versions of Office. Some Office documents like Word have different complexities like heading styles, hyperlinking, bookmarks, and we maintain those all in the final PDF, along with a wide variety of image formats like TIFF. So if you have a lot of content in SharePoint today that's not natively searchable, when you run it through the conversion process and convert it to a PDF, we'll actually do OCR on that and make that content completely text searchable. And one of those examples is a side quotation that I'll talk a little bit more in detail when the process completes and the contract management is finished.
Great. Thanks, Kyle. So essentially what K2 is doing is we have a natural out-of-the-box interface with InfoPath in this case, because that's the form technology we chose to use for this workflow. And again, we're not stuck with InfoPath. We can interface with any number of forms. But filling out this form and attaching these documents for Adlib to work with, we're actually kicking off the workflow. And what I did was I started the K2 Studio, which is one of our 3 different workflow design and definition interfaces, and that's going to start up. I apologize for not starting that sooner, but there we go. So what we're looking at is the actual workflow definition for this contracts management demo. So you can see that there's some automatic steps, there's some human steps. So we have various steps that happen in the process where we're creating draft content. K2 is going out and working with a Word template and bringing in metadata from the form, passing it to Adlib and letting Adlib do the Word to PDF conversion. And Kyle is going to talk about that a little bit. But I just wanted to show you the actual design experience where we configure the workflow. So let me hit submit, and that kicks off the workflow. Great. The form was submitted successfully, and so there we go. And now let's let our K2 web parts load, and we have a My Contracts Management Process web part here where I can go and see the various contracts that I'm involved with. And so here we go. The one kicked off today on May 10th, and I can actually go and look at a nice end-user report that's based on this instance of the workflow. So as you saw when I was looking at my workflow definition in K2 Studio, which again is one of our 3 workflow definition tools, I can go look at a picture of the workflow. This is a Silverlight experience, and it shows me in almost real time what's going on with this contract management request. You see number 412, contract number 412. It's been initialized. It's creating the draft contract, and now Adlib is actually going out. We're making a call to our integration with Adlib to create a draft contract based on that Word template. I don't know if Kyle wants to say anything about that.
No, that's pretty good, Greg. So again, we have 3 different smart objects, as Greg had mentioned before, that integrate directly with our product. One to submit the document with any of the corresponding metadata. We take that into consideration, and we convert merge some of the information from the InfoPath form with that Word template and create a PDF, and we store it in a temporary location that K2 knows where it is. And then we have a couple other smart objects here that actually just check to see if the conversion has been completed successfully. So,
great. Thanks, Kyle. So you can see that the document's been converted to a draft PDF. We've uploaded the draft document to a SharePoint file, and now we're sitting at, and this is just because I know the K2 software, this report is an end-user report, and anything in green has already happened, and anything in blue is waiting to happen. So I see that we're waiting at review contracts, and if I drill into that, we can see that this started today at 9:52. We're a few hours behind here on West Coast time. It's been running for 1 minute and 7 seconds. The expected duration is 5 hours, so we've hit a yellow point. I can drill in and see participants. Remember I mentioned that Holly, by default, based on configuration of the workflow, is by default the approver, but I also checked on the form, Anthony and Brandon were optional approvers. So I'll close that out. And so we're sitting at review contract, and I'm going to minimize that. And let me open up, and I will close actually the, before I close it, let's just say that you can see that when I refresh, there we go, I have a new document. That was part of the workflow. I created a document set based on this new request, number 412, and if I drill into that, I can see that part of the workflow was, hey, I'm going to upload those 4 different document types, the cover, or well, I should say the 4 different attachments from the form, the cover page, the proposal letter, the quotation, the signed document, the TIFF file. And here's where Adlib came in, was because we created a draft PDF file based on a Word template. So K2 took a Word template, added the metadata to it, and then called the Adlib process service broker, and we have a PDF draft file of the contract where the metadata was applied. And so Adlib was nice enough to apply that draft watermark and convert it to a PDF. So it's pretty cool integration with our partner software in Adlib. So let me, like I said, we're sitting at the review process. So I'm going to open up Holly's internet browser. So you can see I'm logging in as Holly now in SharePoint 2010 here, Holly Anderson. And now in the K2 work list, and the work list is a great interface for communicating with K2 tasks. It'll show any tasks that have been assigned to you based on any K2 task that's been deployed, of course, dependent upon configuration. So I could also set my out of the office here. So if I'm out of the office, I could say, hey, all my contract approval tasks should go to Kyle while I'm on vacation, and then Kyle will be assigned. But for now, I have a bunch of tasks here based on contracts. And like I said, Holly is the approver. I could have opened this as Bob or Anthony or Brandon and Anthony, I forget who I mentioned, and they could have taken action on it. It depends on how you want to configure it. But I'm actually going to work on my task now, and you can see that I can redirect or delegate this task to somebody else. I can open up that nice colorful view flow report, but I'm going to open it. And so what Holly sees as the first reviewer is information that was entered when we originally made the request as Barry. There's the originator's information, Barry's AD, Active Directory information. Here's the information from SQL. I have a link to my view flow, which is that nice colorful report which shows in almost real time where we stand with the actual request. I can look at a chart and say, wow, so the review contract has been taking 4 minutes, whereas the initialization only took 17 seconds. Look at some nice reporting information. I could click here and look at the draft document from Adlib. I can look at the attachments, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to say, you know what, I looked at this contract and it looks good. I'm going to approve and put a comment in, approve. Looks good per Holly, 5, 10, 12, whatever, and hit submit. And that's going to move the workflow along. And if we go back to our nice, we're going to go here and open up the view flow. Hopefully I catch it in time. Sorry, I closed that. And we can see it's actually already moved on. So at this review step, which I just completed by Holly, I didn't choose revise, so it didn't go this way. I didn't choose reject, so it didn't go this way. I choose legal approval, approved, so it went down to legal approval, and I can see that, all right, this has been run for about 30 seconds, and I have a bunch of lawyers who are now responsible for taking on this task. Okay? And I'm going to leave that open so next time we're going to catch it. So let me close Holly's browser. And I'm going to open up a browser from one of our lawyers. Here we go. Chris is in the legal space. And so Chris has now a task in his K2 work list dedicated to number 412, request 412 in contracts management. And rather than delegate or redirect to somebody else, I'm going to open it. And so here I have my info path form again that brings back all of my information about the request so I know what I'm making a decision about. Okay. I can see, I still have my link to the view flow and the draft document that Adlib worked on for us. I still have the link to these, all the documents in SharePoint in my document set. I also see my comment by Holly. Remember, I just put that in a couple of minutes ago. Approves, looks good per Holly, 510. So Chris looks at the contract, and Chris thinks it looks good, so he's going to approve it. Looks good. Per legal, Chris, thanks, and I'm going to submit it. And let's go back and see if we can catch our K2 view flow report showing that update. So you can see that it's sitting in blue. That means it's pending at legal approval. I didn't pick revise contract, I didn't pick reject contract, and I didn't pick query. So those items turn red, there we go, and it turns to green, and it means we've actually approved it. And now we have a split and merge, so you can see that the workflow, and K2 can handle serial. Unlike SharePoint Designer, which is all serial, K2 can handle parallel processing, serial processing, state machine. Any workflow pattern you can really throw at it, we can handle. And so what happens is we split and we allow parallel processing on the left and on the right, and then create record step at the bottom. We'll wait until both parallel legs are finished. And so I'm going to hand it over to Kyle to talk about what's going on now with Adlib.
Thanks, Greg. So once legal is approved, we have a split, as Greg had mentioned. So on the left-hand side, we're going to recreate that contract that you saw previously with the draft watermark, but this time we're actually going to remove the draft because it's been approved. We could have, at this point, added other features to the PDF that indicates that the document is approved. It's completely up to you, and K2 could have passed us some metadata that we could have used for publishing and adding headers, footers, watermarks, and so forth. So once that contract is completed, as you can see it's green, we'll jump to the right side. The right side now, we're going to take all the original documents that were attached to the initial info path form, and we're going to merge those together into a single PDF. You have control here of things like the order in which the document is going to be merged in. We have to add features to the document in regards to adding bookmarks, auto-generated table of contents, page numbering, footers, etc. Anything that you require in regards to how this PDF should look and feel when it's completely merged is something that we can control. So right now, it's at the point of merging the content and checking whether the merged file has been completed successfully. So in a few seconds here, we should get a merged file that we can later open up and take a look at.
Great. Thanks, Kyle. And while we're waiting for this to finish, let me just mention, the K2 Smart Object architecture is pretty powerful. It gives us the ability to interface with various enterprise and data stores that we're currently leveraging within our organization. So this is how we interface with and have our integration with SharePoint and SQL and Active Directory, Oracle Web Services, OData, etc. And so it's pretty cool. And it becomes outside of K2 out of the box, when we're talking about our alliances with partners like Adlib, it becomes a one-time experience. So we build, if it's not something that K2 provides out of the box, it becomes a one-time build experience. So we have this, we build this integration with this third-party tool, and then now in design time, it's a repeatable, reusable process that our designers can use when they design a workflow, and they don't have to ever use coding. And I believe is the way it works out now is this integration with Adlib and K2 is already in place. And Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong, but our clients who are currently using K2 and Adlib have access to this K2 Adlib integration now out of the box, correct?
That's correct. So Adlib owns the integration right now, and we've designed and built it. Today, as it stands, if you're looking to incorporate K2 and Adlib together, you would purchase our product separately, and then we would provide you with the integration download and assistance to do the install to ensure that both products communicate and talk correctly to one another. So I don't know, Greg, it seems like the server, I've noticed some slowness with the studio opening and so forth. The package should have been created a long time ago, so I don't know what's happening to the environment right now.
Okay, well, no big deal. Well, this is finishing, and we can keep an eye on it. What I can look at is previously used technology. I tested it yesterday, and so I can see that this is basically the endpoint. It is the, we have a document set that shows the 4 uploaded documents, the TIFF file, the Excel file, the couple Word documents. I have the original contract, which is now by Adlib been turned into a PDF without the watermark, right, Kyle?
That's correct. So one of the rules we defined in our system and a part of the workflow in K2 was let's regenerate that contract using the Word template and the information provided in the info path, but we decided as a business rule not to apply any markup features to the PDF. So since legal has approved it, this is the official approved copy of the contract now.
Great. And so we also have a contract package, which Adlib was, K2 called the Adlib software, and Adlib was nice enough to put together for us, which is a merged PDF with all those 4 different file types, correct?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about this. So again, part of the business process here was to take all of the info documents attached originally to the info path form, and the end result was obviously to create that document set in SharePoint, but also to merge the content into a single PDF. And again, it would depend on your business process, but you can have the PDF look and feel however you decide that you want it to do. But what we've done at this point is we've chosen the order, so we have the cover page, proposal letter, quotation, and sign quotation in that order. The proposal letter, it's a Word document. It originally started out. It has some advanced features like internal hyperlinking. If you look on the right-hand side, you'll see the FA-18 Hornet link. If you click there, it'll take you to the appropriate location. Also, we've had some sub-heading styles within that Word that we've created some sub-bookmarks. So the key here of creating bookmarks allows the customer and end user to easily navigate the content. If you jump to the quotation, again, this is an Excel spreadsheet. It had multiple tabs, so one of the rules we defined in our system was to create sub-bookmarks relating to each of the tabs. Signed quotation originally started out as a non-searchable TIFF file, so once it's in SharePoint, you wouldn't be able natively to search for any content in there, so we've OCR'd that. And Greg, if you select the right-hand side and do a Control-A, yeah, so you'll see now, once this becomes merged into the PDF, if you were to do a search within the PDF, you'll be able to find all the information on that TIFF, or originally that was a TIFF. But more importantly, once this goes back into SharePoint and it's indexed and crawled correctly, if you have the appropriate I filter, you'll be able to search for not only the metadata or column information within the document library, but throughout SharePoint on all this information. Table of contents have been auto-generated. Sorry, Craig.
Sorry about that.
No worries. So if you click on Table of Contents, you'll see that they've been auto-generated with active hyperlinks. The look and feel of the TOC, just like anything else, can be completely configured. We've added a static header and footer to the document. The footer happens to be a legal statement. This could be static or dynamic metadata, and page numbering have been added to the document as well.
Great. Sorry, sorry, Kyle. I was a little crazy with the clicking there.
No worries. So yeah, I talked enough about the PDF. The key thing here is just to remember that when we create the PDF, we have complete control over its look and feel.
Yeah, and that's pretty cool because you can actually search it all now in SharePoint using the SharePoint search engine. So lastly, and again, I realize we're crunched on time here, so I'm just going to roll out the last couple of things here. One of the other items we created with K2 was we created a summary of the process. So if I open up this PDF and that was uploaded to the document status, we have a nice audit trail of what happened. So we can see it was originated, and again, who originated the process, the information returned from a SQL table. We have a link to the actual attachments in SharePoint. We have comment history. You could remember we entered some comments by Holly and Chris, and I'm not using the actual instance that we provided because it looks like it's still sitting there, but I use a different one. But so we have comments by Holly and Chris. We have a link to the view flow, which is that nice colorful image of the process. And we have information about the approvers. Holly and Chris approved, when they approved. So it's a nice audit trail of what's going on with the actual instance or request of the contracts management process. And so let me just take 2 minutes to overview some of the reporting, because the reporting is important, right? When you're building an application around a process, you want to know who did what, when did they do it, how long is it taking. You want to, maybe management wants a nice dashboard look and feel for the process. So we can look at things like this, where it's just, again, it's using a standard SharePoint library, grouping by our folio number that's showing our PDF reports. We can look at a visualization report, which is our integration with Visio, where we see a heat map of the Visio integration, and for each human interaction within the workflow. Remember, it looks like this in terms of the entire workflow. But if we go back to what it looks like in Visio, we might have steps for each human request or each human step, where, like contracts review, where it shows us the average duration for the human step, the number of instances that have been processed by that human step. We can go to look at something like this that might show us the number of contracts by department, amount by department, originators by department, a pie chart with actual originators. So we get a nice dashboard look into what's going on. And finally, some basic out-of-the-box web parts with K2. We can see, we can compare this process versus others. So in the first chart, you see the average duration for the contract's approval versus employee onboarding. And that may not be realistic in real time, but you get the point. Contract management is taking about 28 days, whereas employee onboarding is taking less than a day. Or we can drill into the actual process, contract management, and say that, the activity for review is taking about 5 days, whereas get approval is taking less than a day. And then finally, a couple things I want to show you if I go to my desktop here is K2 has some nice integration with Excel services and Power Pivot. So you could do things like this, integrate right in with your data that's flowing through the K2 workflow process, and be able to show some nice Power Pivot and Excel services data, where you can slice and dice the data any way you want. And that's a pretty cool feature, and it really highlights our integration with the Microsoft stack. And so going back to the K2 SharePoint workflow, you can even have a K2 management portal, where, and this is the last thing I'm going to show, is where you can really look at some admin information about the process, being able to look at instance summary, what's running, what's been stopped, what's errored out, how many instances of a workflow we deployed, how do we revert back, we have versioning and process management, so you can revert back to a previous version, and even a management work list. So as a manager, I can see the number, or I should say, I can see the tasks that are outstanding for one of my subordinates, and be able to take action. So be able to reassign or delegate tasks for my subordinates if maybe they didn't set their out of the office. So it really runs the whole gamut of process management, from forms to integration with different data sources, to task management, to reporting, and that's really how I'm going to wrap it up. Kyle and Karen, I'm going to open it up to you guys if you want to mention anything as we end up, and then we'll do some Q&A.
I think we're really pressed for time here, so we're going to let it go. And if we have any specific questions, Kyle and I are also available by telephone or email after the session.
Okay, Janice, do you have anything?
I do. I'm going to take over presenter rights and come back on. I'm going to start with the question that was received from Daniel. It's a little bit further up in the chat. Hold on. It says typical cost for K2 and Adlib integration per server off a farm, etc.
That's kind of a two-part question because Adlib independently look at the requirements for conversion, publishing, which is merging and adding features and customizing documents, and OCR as long on a customer-by-customer basis. So that's determined it's a server-based pricing, unlimited quantities of conversions, and pricing starts at approximately $6,500 and goes up from there. So most of our customers are in the business of supporting multiple document rendering requirements for within SharePoint, not the one-off on a desktop. And K2 can provide some clarity around their pricing possibilities, but we can go into more details on a case-by-case basis.
Excellent.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Go ahead, Jimmy.
No, go ahead. If you have more answers to your questions, so go ahead.
Yeah, so K2 has a couple different products, and we have a Black Point product, which is specific to SharePoint. So if you really don't need to get outside of SharePoint and do integration with some enterprise data, then our K2 for K2 Black Point product is great, and it provides two different design experiences. We have a web-based Silverlight Designer that sits in SharePoint. We have also our K2 Studio. So for those of you who attended our seminar or our session a couple months ago, you would kind of remember that overview. And then we have K2 Black Pro, which is everything that I talked about, but it also offers the enterprise integration. So you can build these, we provide a bunch of out-of-the-box integration with, like I said, SharePoint, Oracle, AD, SQL, CRM, and so forth. And then we have other add-ons like SAP. So there's different price points, but I'd be happy to talk about that on an individual basis as needed.
Got it. And Karen, if everyone's paying attention to the chat, there are messages that's coming through on the side there. So I think Karen just put in from Adlib pricing with server-based, price-based on server numbers and modules required. Conversion, publishing, OCR, CAD module. So I want to just give another quick, 2 to 5 minutes for these questions that I had here, which was, I think you kind of answered a lot of these already, but just quickly, how does K2 interface with enterprise data on third-party apps?
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. So we have a it's called Smart Objects, and it's a abstract data layer. And that's what I was talking about in terms of our out-of-the-box integration with things like SharePoint, SQL, Oracle, AD, Exchange, Web Services. So we provide a bunch of them out of the box. But we have that all revolves around the SharePoint architecture. And essentially it's an abstract data layer that allows us to communicate with these data sources. And so, what happens if we have a third-party application or some third-party tool that K2 doesn't interface with out of the box, like Adlib. And so and Adlib's kind of an exception because they're a great partner of ours and a true alliance partner that we're really happy with. And so we've built a interface with Adlib, just like we've built something like with SAP and SQL and so forth. So you can get that as a K2 and Adlib partner. But let's say you have a third-party application that perhaps doesn't interface with K2 out of the box. That smart object architecture allows you to do that, and it becomes that one-time exercise. So as long as you can build, as long as there's if it's a closed-off database or a closed-off application that we cannot touch at all, well, of course you're not going to be able to communicate with it. But as long as there's some API or web service, REST, whatever, we can typically interface with it, and it becomes a one-time exercise. So you build the service broker, all right, that communicates between K2 and that third-party application or data store. And then in terms of design, it becomes a non-code, reusable, repeatable interface to that application where you can call the methods, create, read, update, delete, and so forth. And that's what we've done with Adlib. Adlib is built, in fact, Kyle can probably talk more about it than I can, but I believe, Kyle, you've used the K2 Smart Object Architecture with the Service Broker so that you can build, and this is a great example to talk about it, is that interface between K2 and Adlib.
Yes, I have. That's right. Using the appropriate tools is very easy to integrate us with K2 and to build robust business processes. Very straightforward.
Our general integration options for Adlib, though, are a few different things. With SharePoint specifically, since we're in the SharePoint ShopTalk, we built a custom seamless integration into SharePoint to enable connectivity right into the workflow process in SharePoint. Outside of SharePoint, our application is used in various ways in other ECM solutions. So we built some custom connectors to document them and FileNet and a number of other apps. But we also provide a web services interface and a simple folder connector in most simplest applications where you just want users to be able to drop in a document into a folder and the results in conversion take place and then the output. And then the latest and greatest integration process that we worked on is Microsoft Outlook connector. So customers who want to be able to simply convert their PDFs to PDFs through the email process from within Exchange, that's possible now.
Thanks a lot, guys. I just want to, we only have 10 minutes left, so I just want to just ask one other question. I don't see any questions left from our audience. But I'm always interested in number 3, why use K2 rather than develop custom apps or use the SharePoint workflow?
Cool. Thanks, Javis. The one thing about K2 is it provides a number of tools around building a business process. So it's at the heart of it, K2 is a workflow engine, but it also gives you the ability to interface with forms like InfoPath and K2 Smart Forms and ASPX forms and SharePoint forms, and then the data, the business objects to get into enterprise data and reporting and so forth. So it gives you all the abilities to to interface or to build that process-driven application, and then it becomes a consistent exercise, right? So it's a software platform, and hi.
Oh, that's my fault. Paul is
okay. So it becomes a consistent exercise at that point. So now you're using the same form technology, the same reporting, the same dashboards, the same workflow engine, the same integration with data objects and alliance partners like Adlib. And so you don't have users that are going to different applications or needing to do training to interface with different business applications. But in terms of like SharePoint workflow, if we want to take an example specifically, SharePoint workflow is very serial, and so you're limited to what you can do. There's really no loop back. So if you wanted to send a task as a task, you want to say I approve, I reject, or send back to the originator for more information, for example, that becomes an exercise in coding in SharePoint workflow, and it's very serial. K2 is parallel processing and state machine, and you can loop back to a previous step, recursion, in other words, without code. And we have different design, and if you remember from a few months ago when we demoed here previously, we have different design interfaces that are targeted towards different users within your organization. So we have a nice Silverlight web-based drag-and-drop wizard approach designer in SharePoint, for example. And then we have other designers all the way up to something that sits in Visual Studio for a developer, where they can see the code and drill down to the workflow schedules and get access to our API and build nice integration and custom applications. So I wouldn't say that SharePoint is a competitor. It's not. We really leverage SharePoint, and we have a nice integration story with SharePoint. So really what we do is we talk to people who have they've hit walls with SharePoint workflow, and they want to step up to the next level and get a tool that allows them to do the same thing, gives them more functionality, same thing I mean without code, build workflows, more functionality, get around the SharePoint roadblocks, but still be able to leverage a lot of the SharePoint story. And that's why people come to us, from SharePoint, to K2. So thanks.
Well, I'd like to thank Kyle, Greg, and Karen once again for joining us. They have their contact information. I believe Karen just provided hers in the chat message. And I'm going to follow up with some information about K2 and Adlib on the SharePoint ShopTalk site. We really appreciate it. I always like looking at new tools for SharePoint, and hopefully everybody appreciates what you saw today. I really want to thank you one more time for coming on, guys. So we did have a question coming in for today, and I just unmuted Daniel. I'm going to let him ask the panelists his question.
Hello?
Yes, we hear you.
Hello?
Uh-huh.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it's really this question of regarding content roll-up and multiple assigned values. It's a business requirement here that we want those returned in our rolled-up content. And oh, I've lost the slide. I can't remember what I asked. That's it. And it's been working so far quite successfully with using a content query web part and using a jQuery to return the assigned users. Now, as you can see in my question, that it's got slower and slower, understandably, and it now comes to a point where I need to sort of re-architecture it or change how we design it. So I've got three options there. I just really wanted any more options that are viable, and also any comments. People like Laura I know are really up to speed with the content query web part and the data view web part, more so than me. So I've been intrigued to say hi. I'm intrigued to hear what you say.
Well, I found that I don't really like the content query web part because it's not very efficient, and it's I've seen lots of performance issues with it, so I've kind of pretty much started avoiding it. And the problem is that, the problem is that it's great. It's got a great little interface for being able to build roll-ups, but then it's inefficient. But then kind of the other kind of way that people do roll-ups a lot is using search results. So,
yeah, core search.
Yeah, because the search has already been done, so all the items would kind of already been there just as frequently as however often you do crawls, that's how fresh your data is going to be. So
okay.
I would usually steer towards trying to use the search results, like the search results web part, or just, I don't know how much of a developer you are, but
I'm having to
kind of trying to go that route, or even, like Lightning Tools, Lightning Conductor web part is a great, it's like an improved version of the content query web part. It can go across sites, across farms. It can like really let you drill down and pick which fields you want to show and that kind of thing. So you just have to kind of weigh your options there. Usually I end up weighing my options as to whether I want to try and customize the search results web part or just buy, Lightning Conductor, and just kind of decide how much. You
wouldn't bother with the data view web part and make it cross list.
I hadn't really successfully been able to do that in 2010. I was able to do it in 2007, but in 2010, following the same steps, it didn't really work right. So I
got it to work, but it seems very slow.
Yeah, it's probably not. It's probably not going to be any faster than the content query web part.
I think there's two issues here. There's rolling up the content, and I could certainly use the core search as opposed to the content query web part or a search web part. There's also bringing back these multiple assigned values, and that's why I've had to use sort of jQuery. And because it just simply it's as Mark Anderson says, it's a failing in SharePoint. I can send you a link that he's got, and he actually tested it on 2007 and 2010. He just doesn't bring them back. They're empty. No assigned users.
I wouldn't be surprised that the people picker fields. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So essentially, it's what that populates, as I say, fields, and you can go to the site where the list is on, and you can see those 2 users or 3 users, as the case may be. You roll it up, and it's just a little empty space in my content query web part template.
That doesn't surprise me because it's such so hard to have to deal with the user, people pickers and those kind of fields because they have sort of a bunch of stuff buried inside of them, but I don't really know the answer to how to fix it.
Well, so one option is to go to this sort of master detail, which I'm not sure how to do, and could you do that against? Because if I could do that against, say, the data view web part, then I wouldn't bring you back all that information back. It's essentially a limited amount of information coming back, if you see what I mean, based on what's been set as the sort of filter criteria, the master.
I don't know. I'm drawing a blank. I'm drawing a blank on this because usually when I start getting into this kind of realm of these kind of things that need to be done, I usually that would be where I would hand it over to a developer because that gets out of the scope of what can be done out of the box, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay. I was hoping.
No, it's so frustrating.
Visual Studio, but Visual Studio requires so much lines of code, but just doing simple things. If you can include ULS logger, unit testing, you're talking years. Whereas you can do very quickly with them. Oh, okay. I'll have to. I might prompt Mark again because he's giving me ideas.
Yeah. He's going to know more of the developer stuff.
Well, is that Lightning,
okay,
that Lightning tool website that you mentioned, is it fairly easy to get? Is it something that...
Lightning Conductor, it's
Lightning Conductor.
Yeah, on lightningtools.com, they have a trial version you can get, and you can purchase it. I think it's like $1,000 or less.
Muted.
Thanks. I think I got muted, but thanks for that. Yeah, let me know what you find out, Daniel. Oh, I muted you. I think we all got muted, Laura, for some reason. I'm sorry. Laura? Laura?
All right, I unmuted myself.
Okay.
So yeah, I think I was done talking. That was it.
Okay. All right, well, thank you so much, and thanks to you, Daniel, for your question. If you can, come back and let us know what you find out from Mark. Okay?
Will do.
All right. I want to thank everybody for joining us. We've hit our 12:30 mark, so I want to thank our panelists, as well as all of our attendees and our guest product spotlight. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.